The road to Ravenswood twisted like a serpent through an unbroken stretch of dense, ancient forest. The trees, gnarled and towering, leaned inward as if conspiring to hide the secrets that lay beyond. The autumn air was thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, clinging to Emma Sinclair's senses like a warning. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her eyes flicking between the road ahead and the glowing map on her phone. The village was close, closer than she had anticipated, but the further she drove, the more the fog thickened, swallowing the world around her in an eerie, suffocating embrace. Ravenswood had been a whispered name in an old newspaper article, buried deep in an archive few had touched in decades. It spoke of a village that had, inexplicably, been abandoned overnight. Some speculated it had been the site of a long-forgotten plague, others claimed the townsfolk had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind untouched meals and beds still warm. But no concrete evidence had ever surfaced. It was a ghost town in the truest sense, lost to time. As a journalist dedicated to unearthing lost histories, Emma felt an irresistible pull toward its mystery. Through the fog, a warped wooden signpost emerged, its letters barely visible beneath the years of decay. Welcome to Ravenswood. Population. The final number had been scratched out violently as though someone, or something, had tried to erase its memory. A shiver crawled up Emma's spine, but she pressed forward, her curiosity outweighing the whisper of caution at the back of her mind. The village materialized through the mist like a half-remembered nightmare. Tall Victorian houses stood eerily intact yet lifeless, their windows dark as though watching her approach. Rusting lampposts, long extinguished, lined the cracked streets, their twisted forms stretching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. The silence was deafening. No birds, no insects, not even the whisper of wind through the trees, just an oppressive stillness, thick with unseen eyes. Emma pulled into the town square and turned off the engine, the sudden silence even more jarring than the drive through the fog. She hesitated before stepping out, the air chilling her skin in a way that had nothing to do with the autumn breeze. One building stood apart from the rest, the Hollowbrook Inn. The rusted sign swayed on creaking hinges, the letters barely legible beneath layers of grime. The windows, though clouded with dust, felt like eyes pressing against her, observing, waiting. Steeling herself, she stepped forward and pushed the heavy wooden door open. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of dust and something faintly metallic. White sheets draped over furniture like specters frozen in time. The wooden floor groaned beneath her boots as she approached the front desk, where a single book lay open, an old guest book, its pages brittle with age. Her fingers brushed the faded ink of the last recorded entry. Jonathan Hale, October 13, 1954. Her breath hitched. The date was exactly 70 years ago. To the day. Then from deep within the inn, the silence shattered. A sound, faint yet unmistakable, slithered through the air. A dragging noise, slow and deliberate like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Emma's pulse spiked, her body frozen between flight and foolish curiosity. The noise came again, closer this time. The air shifted. The room, once merely old and forgotten, now felt alive, aware. Then, just beyond the threshold of the hallway, a shadow moved. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she fixated on the shadow. It was human-shaped but wrong, elongated, distorted, its edges flickering like smoke struggling to hold form. Her instinct screamed at her to flee, but her journalist's mind, driven by an insatiable need for answers, kept her rooted in place. The dragging noise resumed, this time accompanied by a soft whisper. It was barely audible, a breath against the silence, but the words were unmistakable. You shouldn't be here. Emma's fingers clenched around her phone, her heart hammering so violently she feared it might drown out the sound. The hallway stretched before her, a gaping maw of darkness, its depths impossible to see beyond the dim glow of her flashlight. Steeling herself, she took a cautious step forward. The wooden floor groaned beneath her weight, the sound swallowed quickly by the oppressive quiet. The air grew colder with each step, the temperature plummeting unnaturally fast. As she neared the hallway's threshold, her flashlight flickered. Static crackled in her ears, a noise that hadn't been there before. Then something brushed against her arm. Emma gasped and stumbled backward, the cold sensation like fingers trailing down her skin. Spinning around, she aimed the flashlight wildly, but nothing was there. The sheets covering the furniture remained undisturbed, the guest book on the counter still open to the last entry. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Logic warred with terror. The room was empty. And yet, a floorboard creaked upstairs. Emma snapped her gaze to the staircase at the far end of the lobby. The darkness at the top was impenetrable, a black void stretching beyond the reach of her light. Another whisper drifted down from above, softer this time, but layered with something chilling, a second voice overlapping the first. "Don't look." Her skin prickled, but her feet moved before she could think. She placed one hand on the banister and climbed, her flashlight illuminating peeling wallpaper and dust-laden picture frames. The hallway at the top branched off in two directions. The left led to a series of closed doors, their brass handles tarnished. To the right, the corridor stretched toward an open doorway, where a dim light pulsed like a dying heartbeat. Emma turned toward the light. Her footsteps were muffled by the thick layer of dust on the floor. The air was thick with a scent she couldn't quite place, something acrid like burnt wood mixed with decay. As she stepped through the doorway, the light above flickered once, casting brief shadows across the room. A single chair sat in the center, facing the far wall. On it lay an old, tattered journal, its leather cover cracked with age. Heart pounding, Emma stepped closer and reached for it. As her fingers brushed the cover, the whispering stopped. And then, right behind her, a rasping breath. Emma spun around, the flashlight trembling in her grip. The doorway was no longer empty. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the dim hallway light. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, its limbs too long, its body wrapped in shadow. And though it had no eyes, Emma felt its gaze pierce straight through her. Then, in a voice that did not belong to the living, it spoke. "You read the name. Now you are part of it." Emma's pulse pounded in her ears as the figure loomed in the doorway, its presence suffocating, its words a chilling pronouncement. The journal trembled in her grip, and she forced herself to move, stepping backward, away from the figure. "Who are you?" she managed to whisper, though she wasn't sure she wanted an answer. The figure took a single, slow step forward. The floor beneath it groaned as though protesting its weight. The shadows around its form rippled unnaturally, bending and distorting as if reality itself were rejecting its presence. Emma's instincts screamed at her to run, but logic held her in place. If she fled blindly, she would lose control of the situation. She needed information. She needed to understand what she was dealing with. Gathering her courage, she flicked her flashlight directly at the entity. The beam sputtered and dimmed as though the darkness around the figure was devouring the light itself. But in that brief instant, Emma caught a glimpse of something beneath the shadows. A face, or what used to be one. The skin was mottled and stretched too tightly over its bones. The mouth, barely more than a gash in its face, moved again. "The name binds you. The name takes you." Emma's breath hitched as she recalled the guest book. Jonathan Hale. She had read it. And now, the journal. Heart hammering, she dropped her gaze to the book in her hands. If the name held power, then maybe the journal held answers. Without another second's hesitation, she turned and bolted for the window. The figure lunged, an inhuman shriek splitting the air. Cold fingers brushed the back of her jacket as she dove forward, smashing through the glass. She hit the ground hard, rolling onto her side with a sharp cry. Pain flared through her shoulder, but she forced herself to her feet. The fog coiled around her like living tendrils, but she didn't stop to catch her breath. The figure, whatever it was, had been inside the inn. But was it bound to it? Or could it follow? She couldn't take the risk. Clutching the journal to her chest, she sprinted toward her car. The silence of Ravenswood felt even heavier now, as though the very air was watching her, waiting. As she neared her vehicle, her heart sank. The engine, would it start? Would the fog let her leave? Fumbling with the keys, she yanked the door open and threw herself inside. Her fingers shook as she turned the ignition. The engine sputtered. Once. Twice. Then a whisper curled through the fog, slithering into her ear as if spoken from just behind her. "Stay." Emma slammed her foot on the gas as the engine roared to life. Gravel spat from beneath the tires as she tore down the cracked road, the village of Ravenswood vanishing into the mist behind her. The shadows in her rearview mirror twisted unnaturally, but she didn't dare slow down. Only when she reached the highway miles away, did she finally pull over. Her hands were locked in a death grip on the wheel, her breathing ragged. She was out. She was alive. But as she looked at the tattered journal on the passenger seat, a chilling realization settled over her. She had escaped Ravenswood. But the mystery had followed her. Emma sat in her car, the weight of the journal on her lap pressing into her like an anchor to something she wasn't sure she wanted to understand. The highway stretched ahead, empty in the dead of night, but she felt far from safe. The whisper from Ravenswood still echoed in her ears. "Stay." Her fingers tightened around the journal's cracked leather cover. She had taken something from that place, something more than just an artifact. It was a piece of the mystery, but she feared it was also a tether. She needed answers. Steeling herself, she flipped open the journal. The pages were yellowed with age, brittle to the touch, filled with handwritten entries in a sharp, deliberate script. The first few pages seemed mundane, detailing daily life in Ravenswood, until she reached the later entries. October 10, 1954. The whispers have returned. We see them at the edge of the forest in the fog. They speak of the name. They say it must not be known. October 11, 1954. Jonah tried to leave. The fog swallowed him whole. His house is empty, his supper still warm. No one speaks of it, but we all know, he is gone. We are all bound here. October 12, 1954. I saw it. In the inn. It knows I have written the name. I hear it breathing in the walls. October 13, 1954. It is too late. Emma's breath hitched. The date, October 13th. The same date she had arrived at Ravenswood. The day Jonathan Hale had disappeared. A sharp rap against her window shattered her concentration. She gasped, heart leaping into her throat as she jerked her head up. A man stood outside her car, illuminated by the pale glow of her headlights. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken, and his clothes looked decades out of place. She hesitated before lowering the window an inch. "Can I help you?" His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "You need to go back." Emma's stomach clenched. "Excuse me?" The man cast a wary glance over his shoulder, as if fearing something unseen. "You took the journal. That means you read the name." Her grip on the book tightened. "Jonathan Hale?" The man flinched. "Don't speak it. Not out here. Not where it can hear." Emma's pulse thundered in her ears. "What is it?" The man exhaled shakily. "The thing that took Ravenswood. It doesn't just erase people. It erases memory. That town, it's not abandoned. It's consumed. If you don't go back and return what you took, it will come for you next." A cold dread settled over Emma's spine. "Who are you?" The man's expression twisted in something between sorrow and fear. "I was supposed to leave that night too. But I forgot. Or maybe I was forgotten. You have one chance. Go back before midnight. Or you'll forget everything just like the rest of us." Emma swallowed hard, her mind racing. She had barely escaped Ravenswood. Could she really return? Did she even have a choice? Then, from the shadows beyond her headlights, something moved. A whisper curled through the night air, unmistakable and cold. "It's already here." Emma slammed the car into gear and floored the accelerator, gravel spraying as she sped back toward the cursed village she had barely left behind. She had to end this, before it erased her too. Emma's car tore through the darkness, the headlights cutting a fragile path through the lingering fog. She had no plan, only a desperate certainty that she had to return to Ravenswood before it was too late. The journal lay open on the passenger seat, the inked words seemingly shifting each time she glanced at them. The village emerged from the mist like a forgotten dream. It was the same as before, silent, still, waiting. The hollow brook inn stood at the center, its door ajar. Emma stepped inside, gripping the journal as if it were a lifeline. A whisper curled through the stagnant air. "You came back." She ignored the voice, moving toward the fireplace in the lobby. The journal needed to be destroyed. She knew it now. It was the last tether to whatever force had trapped this place in its eerie existence. "It won't let you leave," a voice warned from the shadows. Emma turned. Jonathan Hale stood at the edge of the dim hallway, his form flickering like a dying candle. His face was hollow, eyes filled with something beyond fear. "It takes those who know. If you destroy it, you must replace it." Her breath hitched. "No. There has to be another way." "Only one," Jonathan whispered, stepping closer. "A trade. A name for a name." Emma understood in an instant. That's why the village had vanished from history, why no one remembered Ravenswood. Someone had been sacrificed to take its place, erased from time. She looked at the journal, then back at Jonathan. He was already lost, a fragment of something that no longer belonged in this world. But she could still walk away. Her fingers trembled as she flipped to the last page of the journal. She took a pen from her pocket and, with steady determination, wrote a single name: Jonathan Hale. The moment the ink dried, a rush of wind tore through the inn. The building groaned as the shadows recoiled. Jonathan's face softened. His body shimmered before dissolving into nothing. The air cleared. The silence no longer felt suffocating. Emma stepped back, feeling lighter. The journal was gone. The Hollowbrook Inn, the village itself, everything, fading, unraveling. She ran outside just as the last remnants of Ravenswood disappeared into the night. When she turned, There was nothing but an empty road and the vast forest beyond. No signs of a village. No records. As if it had never existed. Emma drove away, her mind still racing. Had she saved herself? Had she broken the curse? Or had she simply passed it on? She would never know. This is a work of fiction. The village of Ravenswood does not exist. Or, if it ever did, no one remembers.